Howdy. Howdy.
Happy Thursday! I'm like, that's all you're gonna say.
Brains are working a bit slow today, but you know.
恭喜发财 once again.
恭喜发财.
We're gonna take every opportunity to
Yes,
say this because
that's
we only
right.
get to say it once a year.
Yeah, it is still Chinese New Year. Chinese New Year lasts for 15 days.
Yes.
That's the official, timeline for Chinese
What
New Year.
it basically means is that we eat for 15 days and we justify all the sugar and carbs and everything, as part of the celebration.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why he's feeling poorly today because Yuri currently now has a bad headache. He just took Panadol Extra.
Not just the regular
not
one,
just
but it's
the
the extra
regular
one because
Panadol.
I was quite affected by the,
Yeah.
like Chinese food tends to have a lot of
MSG,
MSG inside. And I
Ajinomoto.
think I had one with quite a bit of MSG.
Yes, for those of you who regularly get headaches, it's very likely because there's MSG in your food. A lot of people are very sensitive to it. Yuri is one of them. Singi is, my sister-in-law is another one who gets like extreme headache and migraines when they take like food that doesn't agree with their bodies.
But regardless, I am very happy to be here. And we have a very interesting topic today.
He's really happy to be here because Yuri is very passionate about today's topic.
Yeah, yesterday I brought
can we
this
just tell
topic
people
up
what
with
the topic
Xandria,
is?
and the topic is standards. Us having standards, right, in our lives, and how standards affect our happiness. I was thinking about how standards affect our happiness. Sometimes we are proud to say, I'm a person of standards, right? In my relationships, I have standards, or in my food, or in my, the way of life, in the clothes that I buy, I have standards, and I'm very proud to have standards because that means I'm a person of standards, right? And I was just thinking that form of, that way of thinking, right, sometimes lead us to not be so happy. And how does that happen?
Yeah, so let's take everybody through what's in your mind as to, okay, so today's topic is how do you handle and how do you cope and how do you respond when people don't meet your standards and when things don't meet your standards.
Yeah.
And, just to basically answer this question on the surface, I think that a lot of us get very bothered and upset when people and things don't meet our standards. And you can see this constantly in relationships.
Yep.
When one partner has very high standards and they feel very frustrated or resentful that their partner does not try hard enough to meet that particular standard. And I feel like it's like kind of like it becomes the norm for us human beings to embrace standards because we feel like having standards is a great thing. And if you really think about like the history, like our reasoning of the history of where standards come from, I think it comes from a desire for improvements. Right?
Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is just this okay, maybe the historical thing, right?
Yeah,
But
I'm just saying historical for the sake of saying let's
ancient
examine.
history.
Let's examine why there even exists standards, and I'm gonna like say that like it existed for a very good cause, a very good reason,
Yes.
and that is for improvements.
Yeah. Think of the word standards, right? Like standards is kind of like standards and standardized and things, which means that like things are meant to sort of like be at a certain level of quality.
Yes.
Right? That's what standards are.
So all of us want high standards because it reflects our professionalism, it reflects like our taste.
Or maybe even it reflects how much of a quality person that we are, right? And I was telling Xandria, like, how about this other approach to standards, which is not defining our personal standards.
Okay, so this is an alternative to standards.
Yeah, this is the alternative.
Okay.
It's just living life. And when something happens, either it sort of like you can accept it, or you can choose not to accept it, or you can do something about it, right? And you don't sort of refer to your internal mind, to your internal booklet and say, okay, my standard is I this. What you do is you just respond to it naturally without thinking about what your standards are.
So you're saying that we should it's good to respond naturally, or that we tend to subconsciously refer to standards?
No. Like this is one other way of approaching it. Like so the next time when you face with something, you don't refer to your internal standards. You just you just naturally let yourself naturally respond to it
Okay,
and see what happens.
So when you say that, this naturally responds, right? I do think that a lot of us subconsciously
Yes.
already have conditioning as to what we like, what we don't like, what's good and what's bad. We have all these like black and white definitions, and then we have standards, right, that we absorb from our family. Like, oh, you know, like your parents may say that, oh, you got to date a person who's like this, you can't date a person who's like that, and you got to have high standards. So these are things that are already in your subconscious.
Exactly.
So if you go along to that advice of like just referring to what you instinctively feel about it, maybe all this conditioning is
No, it will
hampering.
most definitely come into play.
Yes.
And so to begin doing this kind of practice, right, this alternative way of looking at things, right, is to become aware of the kind of standards that we hold ourselves
Yeah.
to, or hold other people to, or hold the world to, right?
Yeah.
And once we become aware of that, then we can choose whether we want to become to subconsciously follow it or not. Right?
So we're going to be aware of what we've defined as our standards, is what you're saying.
Yes, and you know, I'm not saying that standards are a bad thing, because standards are sort of like help things get to where maybe they could be.
Like we set a standard
Yeah.
for certain things, right?
Yeah.
But like we were discussing these.
Yeah, for example, at work, right?
if it's like a manual.
If let's say we make like books or something like that, right? And they need to be of a certain dimension, right?
Size,
And these
yeah.
are the standards of this book, right?
Okay.
And sometimes, you know, maybe the pages are a bit crooked or a little bit off and they're not not exactly right, and then you reject the book and you don't allow it because it doesn't fit the standard. Now there is a practical value to that, right?
Okay.
So oftentimes, sometimes we think our lives have like standards because then there is a practical value to that. And if there is a practical value, then it's fine, you know?
I like that. I like the fact that, okay, so now it becomes clearer, right? What is the practical value of your standards?
Yep.
Now, you guys are talking about like common interests, compromise. You know, like, so this is kind of like still iffy. Like, what are we exactly talking about? You know, how
Okay.
about compromise? And so like here, it's basically, it's not so much about like what's fair or what should we compromise on or should we compromise our standards. It's not what we're talking about. So what Yuri is trying to basically present this viewpoint is that if we have like a certain standard, or like when it comes to relationship, of what kind of person we want to date, what kind of person our spouse need to be, whether he or she needs to be this, because our standards are like high.
Yeah, like a wife should have this. Or
Yes.
a husband should be at this level of husbandship, you know?
Yes, like standards, right?
Yeah.
And in our mind, because standards are often perceived as a very positive thing, we may hold on to our standards without realizing that they're manifesting into expectations, which actually cause sabotaging us, actually
Yeah.
making us miserable.
That's exactly the point. Xandria came to the main point of why we're talking about today
Yeah.
is that are our standards making us unhappy?
Yes, our standards making us miserable, sabotaging us. And this is a hard question to answer in many ways, because if we're only starting to think about this, it'll take some time to really just examine what our standards are and what practical value are we getting from our standards. So let's go back to practical value, right? So let's say, for example, you know, if I'm single and I'm looking for a partner and I have a list of the standards that I want my partner to adhere to, like, you know, he needs to speak these languages and he needs to be polite this way and he needs to have this kind of job and he needs to treat my parents this way and he needs to, and those are like my standards. I feel like we have this list, and when we meet people and they fall short of our standards, we can become very unhappy with them. So in this sense, having all these standards have really no real practical value. In fact, it has a lot of negative value to our lives. Now, however, if we can change, like to substitute standards, and instead of thinking that I have very high standards, let's just think about, okay, what do I want out of life and how do I get them? Right? And it's what I want really actually useful for my life. So your list of like the perfect guy or girl that you're looking for, is it really that important that they meet these standards? Is it more, or is it okay that they are kind and they're compassionate and they're able to solve problems with you positively?
And sometimes, also another question you have to ask about your own standards is, are these even my standards?
Yes.
Or are these my parents' standards? Or are these my friends' standards?
That
or are
you've
these my
absorbed.
society standards, right? Like do sometimes you get drawn to like you have to drive this kind of car, or you have to, your wife has to be, this whatever good looking or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then you get drawn into it and you feel like this is the kind of life I intend to live.
Yeah, like Karine here says, I was just reading this chapter from your book today. This is my book. And yeah, it's interesting you say this because like here, actually towards the end, I also mentioned about standards, I'm just going to quickly read this to you. I've always taken such pride in my tastes and standards that I had to stop and reevaluate if they were actually holding me back from being easily delighted and easily grateful. Because when you have standards, right, you kind of compare and measure everything to your standards, and maybe it stops you from being easily delighted and easily grateful. I realized then that being easily pleased is such a blessing because it's a wonderful way to practice gratitude, right? And so it's not so much about not having like a goal, and it's not about like not having an idea of what you want or what you like.
If you like it, if it brings you sort of like, more joy,
Yeah.
then feel free to go after it. But bear in mind that, when you find that in the absence of something, then you are suffering or unhappy or angry or frustrated,
Yeah.
then you realize that it's more of a sort of ego-driven thing.
It's not useful.
Yeah, it's not useful to you.
I think this is a great question to always ask ourselves, like, is this useful? It's not so much like, is this right? Right? It's right to have high standards, and it's right to expect my partner to be like this, and it's right to expect work to be like this, right? Because these are the standards that it should be. I think like instead of like thinking like that, we can always ask ourselves, okay, so are my standards useful? Do they have a practical value? Or it's just like things on paper, and it just makes us compare everything and measure people against our standards and then fighting about it or feeling upset about it.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some comments.
Let's see. Stephen? I usually
have to overcompensate, which sometimes looks like a negative to the person who isn't up to my standards. I totally get that. I try really hard not to offend them.
If I'm going over their work. Yeah, I mean, the work thing is a very practical problem that you face. Like Yuri he works with like different people.
Yeah.
And we've discussed like issues or instances where they have a different standard from you.
I mean, if you have a particular standard, like we were talking about earlier, if you're creating something and you need it to sort of fulfill a certain standard, like in terms of whether the quality of the thing or the number of faults that it has, what do you reject or what do you allow?
I think like specifications, right?
Yeah, those are specifications. Those are standards as well.
For practical
and
purposes.
And they create a real world result.
Yes.
And even in the implementation of those standards, you don't have to be unhappy if something doesn't fulfill that standard. If let's say I'm sorting eggs, and like only eggs of a certain size I allow to go through, and this one's too small, I don't rage at this egg for being too small. Right? It's just, okay, it doesn't meet the standard. Now this one goes there, and maybe it goes into the smaller egg pile and does its small egg thing.
And you see the difference, right? Because when Yuri's talking, like this standard that you're meaning, it's just a word. It's a word to describe something that doesn't pass through quality check. Like work. It's when it doesn't pass through quality check, there is a reason for it. It doesn't meet the specs, and therefore it cannot pass through, right?
Yeah.
And we use the word standard, right? This is the standard for doing this. This is dimension. This is specs. But in real life, especially with people, we use the word standards. It's different from what he was talking about.
Yeah, sometimes we treat people differently or more unkindly.
Yes.
Like, sometimes you think that tourists from certain other countries might be Oh, they're so low standard, or the behavior is
Yes.
such a low standard behavior.
And people from China actually get a lot of flack.
Yeah, people from China do get a lot of flack.
Yes.
And it's just that culturally they are different from us, right? And when we look at, say, like, their standards for lining up, or their
Yes.
standards for cleanliness, or whatever
Yes.
it might be, we might
Or
judge.
manners.
Yeah, and we might judge them for that. And to be able to accept, to look at them and say, you know what, you are a human being who has grown up in a particular culture, and this is what you are. And to look at that with kindness.
And standard is actually another word for norm, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
another. So it's like, okay, so people who cut queue and cough with their mouth, like without covering their mouth, and
Yeah.
and what's the other stuff that people get really upset
Yeah,
at?
like
Chinese
spit
people, like
all over the
people who
place.
spit all over the place. They have a different standard,
Yeah.
right? Like from me and Yuri, right? We have a different standard. Now, to acknowledge this is to acknowledge that we have different norms.
Yes.
Like for them, they grow up like that. For them, that's normal. But it's not to say like, oh, we have a different standard. Like our
We elevate
standard.
ourselves above somebody
Yes.
else. And
So obviously we have a preference.
Yeah.
We prefer our standard, which means we prefer our norm. But it's like an egg, different sizes, right? Then you just choose which one you want, right?
Yeah.
It's not to say judge the egg for.
And if you can do something about it, if you feel like, the person should line up or should not spit, you can actually approach them and talk to them about it.
Yes, rather than being upset.
As opposed to just from afar, just saying that, this is just like low standard behavior or something like
Yeah,
that.
like Diana here says, we should look at other people's standards with curiosity.
That's exactly
learn
it.
something new.
That's a wonderful way.
I'm gonna like this comment.
Like,
How do I like this? Double tap. Like.
yeah, there we go.
Yay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Curiosity is the key word here, because it is interesting that people are
Yes.
different. And when you start to look at like people, whether it's tourists or other
Your
people that way,
colleague, your family member.
yeah, you start to look at those closer to you, because your partner, sometimes you are so close that you think that we share the same standards, we share the same norms.
Oh, that you should have the same standards.
Yeah. And sometimes it only comes up after maybe a year or
Of
2
being
years
married.
or 5 years of going out, and then you find out that, my partner's standards on cleanliness, or
or timing,
yeah,
or finance,
yeah, on socializing
or raising a
like-
child even.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
are different from yours, right? And if you look at things in terms of, oh, I have standards, that's why we need to do it like this, it's very different from saying, let's be curious about where each other is and why we are like that, and the reasons why each of us are like that. And that's a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I think
that
so.
opens up the channel to be able to understand.
Yes.
And you never lose from understanding.
Listening to you, there's another thing that just hit me, and it's again the practice. Everything's about practice, right? Instead of feeling upset when people don't meet our standards, we can acknowledge the feeling of frustration and then change and turn and switch that feeling around, because frustration is not nice, right? The feeling is not nice. We can switch that to curiosity. Because when we switch the way we think about it, we change the way we feel about it. So with curiosity, what we're automatically doing is trying to understand you as opposed to judging you or imposing my standard upon you. So if you're behaving in a way like, let's say, like you leave your cups everywhere in the house, and that's not a good standard, right? Like instead of like me feeling frustrated, why are you like that, blah, 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 maybe I can be curious and have a conversation with you about it and really try to understand, is it because in your house, growing up, there was your habit already, or do you think that like you want to compile all 10 cups and then put them all to the sink at one time? Like really try to understand why the person's standard is different, like why their normal is different from yours.
And we sometimes are too quick to come up with a story.
Yes, because you know why? Because if I were you, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. If I were you and I am doing this, that means I am either being lazy or being.
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we always try to come up with
Impose.
very quick explanations of how
Yes.
others behave based on our own standards.
Yes, it happens all the time. And even when we're aware of it, sometimes we're just acting subconsciously. Okay, we have a few questions here. Cherry will get to your question soon. And Myrna and Jody, we're going to read a question out loud soon. Right now, I am going to read out Cayenne's. comment, for me, I always doubt myself. When the person have their standard, however, the person blame me for not meeting their standards. You know, I think that when it's a relationship, it's actually quite easy to have like paranoia and doubts when your partner keeps telling you that
Yeah.
you have to meet their standards.
Sometimes you feel like your value is sort of like you're a less
Yeah.
valuable person because
Yeah.
your partner holds up a certain standard that you are not.
And because you love them, so obviously you trust their opinion, and then you can sort of doubt yourself a lot.
Yeah.
And what I can say here is that have like a conversation with your partner and just tell your partner how it makes you feel. You know, that exactly what you just wrote in the comment, you know, that like I respect and I really like that you have all this desire to improve, and maybe that's where your standards come from. But when you keep telling me to change the way I am, it makes me doubt myself. I think you can just communicate with your partner exactly how you feel,
Yeah.
and just have a conversation about it, you know.
And
Yeah.
it's good to open up this kind of conversations because if they never open up, it just leads to frustration from both parties, you know, and as time goes by, it becomes more and more frustrating.
Yeah.
And you know, like Xandria was talking about converting all that standards and frustration into curiosity, right? You never, you know, you think about it, all the times you felt frustrated, right? You never feel genuinely curious and frustrated at the same time. It doesn't happen together. You're
Yeah.
either genuinely curious or you're frustrated. These two emotions cannot exist at the same time.
It's very much like anger and gratitude.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when you're feeling grateful for your life, it's very hard to be angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you're curious, it's very hard to be frustrated. So it's a hack, actually.
Yeah.
It's a really good hack. I
Yeah.
like it.
Train
I like
yourself
it.
to be curious, and you'll very
Yes.
rarely feel frustrated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cherian, hello, I have a question.
My partner is very judgmental and speaks about everything and everyone, and I have an issue with that. He said he sees nothing wrong doing it once he doesn't say it to their faces.
Because he doesn't say
How do I deal with that? I try not to pass judgment at all.
Yeah, I think in all relationships, I think one of the things that we ourselves can practice is acceptance, and exactly what Yuri said, Cherry, applies here. Now, it's very hard because you have a certain belief, and your partner has a certain belief, right? And so you don't agree with the way he sees the world or the way he sees people, and that can be very difficult to condone or respect, right? It can feel very difficult. Now, however, I think the first question you got to ask yourself is, why do I want to be with this person? Or do I want to be with this person, right? These are two questions that you have to ask yourself. And if you decide that I want to be with this person, and I want to be with this person because A, B, C, D, E, then you have a very substantial and concrete reason that you know that you want to be with this person. Now, if you want to be with this person, they are like that. They are like that, right? And for you, you have a different belief, and you have to be okay that your partner has a different kind of belief when it comes to passing judgment on people. And what Yuri just said about curiosity and understanding, it will help you not feel so frustrated at your partner. And in this sense, you begin to understand why he does that. And it doesn't have to be the kind of understanding that you need to agree with, right? It's just curiosity, right? Observe. Curiosity is listening, observing, understanding. Now, it doesn't mean that you agree.
Yeah.
Listening, being curious, understanding doesn't mean you have to agree to that behavior. It doesn't mean you're encouraging the behavior either. A lot of us think that, hey, if I don't say anything, it means I am encouraging the behavior. No, that's not true. Now, what magically can happen, and I use the word magic, is that when you know you want to be with this person, and you have made up your mind and decided you want to be with this person, and you practice understanding and acceptance of who this person is, the magic that happens is that you will begin to influence the other person towards the way you feel about certain things. And you don't even have to try to change them. So when when you're having conversations with your partner and you talk about your beliefs and your views, because they feel accepted, they don't feel defensive, and they are more open-minded to look at the way you live your life, and you can inspire your partner to become more like you. But this is not it cannot be like a strategy where you are trying to change
Yeah.
the person and you pretend that you accept so that they're not defensive. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So love is acceptance, and no, everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and they're just different from us. And if it's something in your partner that you feel like you can positively influence, the only way to do it, the magic only happens, it's when they don't feel like you are judging them. And so I think this is a great opportunity, because you say you don't like to judge people, right? So this is a great opportunity for you to practice not judging your partner.
Yeah,
It's a win-win-win for you.
Yeah, oftentimes, sometimes we can also feel the same kind of sort of judgment towards people who are judging other people.
Yes.
Ironically, we are judging the judger.
It's like hate the haters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's our practice as well. The suffering comes from us, right?
Yes.
So the practice must come from us as well.
Yes. But you just have to decide whether you want to be with this person or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't have that frustration, you are also deciding based on sort of like more sort of level-headed
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. You're clear-headed.
Yeah, clear-headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is from Juliana, or it's just a comment. Everyone have different standards. No one is the same. If you want people to have your standard, then maybe it's time to be more sensible. Yeah, I like that because it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the whole idea is that we want to be sensible people, right?
Yeah.
And sensible means that we want to do things that make sense. Make sense for what? Makes sense towards us being happy.
Yeah. Like
That's essentially it.
Jody here has a question.
What would your advice be when a parent holds you at a much higher standard than her other daughter?
Okay, this I have to say is it can feel incredibly hurtful, because a parent and child relationship, I kind of feel like every child wants the approval of their parents. Every child wants their parent to be proud of them. And every child wants to be loved the same way, which means we want to be treated the same as our siblings, right? There's no double standard happening. And when we can see, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not true. If we perceive it to be such,
Yep.
then that's how we feel about it. Now, I do want to say that in these kind of situations, the only way for you to be able to be happy is to accept your parent for who they are. And don't look at your mom and dad as just your mom and dad. Look at them as human beings who also, sometimes when it comes to certain things, might not be so wise. There are some things they cannot see. They cannot see how it's hurting you, because I'm sure they love you, right? They wouldn't do something if they can see how it's hurting you. They just cannot see. That's one thing. Now, the second thing that I think in this kind of situation, it can be very enriching for you to practice. Turn this into an opportunity to work on giving validation to yourself, instead of needing your parents' approval and validation to feel good about yourself. And this is tough because, like I say, intrinsically, when it comes to parent and child, a lot of, like us, we want our parents to be proud of us, right? And we want them to be fair. So acknowledging this, we can step back a little bit and go, okay, how does this make me feel? Does it make me feel more insecure? Does it make me feel like I'm not as good as my sibling? Does it make me just feel bad about myself? Now, if that's what is making you feel, then I think it's time now as an adult that you work on loving yourself, work on genuinely feeling like you are enough, regardless of what anybody thinks, including your parents.
Yeah.
And I know it's not easy, but it is a very enriching practice for your life.
Yeah, like as Xandria was saying, when you see your parents as people, right, with flaws and hopes and fears and everything, right? Funny thing is, the more imperfect you see them as,
Yeah.
the more you can love them actually.
Yeah.
The better you can love them, because
Yeah.
you see them not for this projection of perfection or projection of this parent that's supposed to
Yeah.
do this.
Or how they should be.
Yeah. You see them as
Yeah.
people and you say, this person, this imperfect person is also my father or mother,
Yeah.
parent, right? And I want to love this person.
And I'm not saying that you won't feel disappointed. I think that people can disappoint you. And I think what's important is above and beyond feeling disappointed, we have to practice understanding, as to like, okay, so I hope that the situation is A, but it turned out to be B and I'm disappointed. However, this disappointment is not going to set me back. It's not going to define my life. It's just one of the many trials and tribulations that I have to go through as a human being on this earth, right?
Yeah. And working on your self-worth, right?
Yes.
One of the things you can really do well is if you can bring a lot of joy to people.
Yeah.
To people around you, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's casual interactions or deeper interactions, right?
Yeah.
Is one of the great things that can make you feel very good about yourself.
Like the other thing, like I would say, like Jody, is don't discount the power of simple human connection, which means that if you want to feel like you are contributing to people and you are very worthy, one of the best ways to do that is to really connect with like people you meet on a daily basis, like people you buy lunch from, breakfast from, coffee from, right? And just like make eye contact and engage and ask about your day and get to know them and your names and a little bit like talk to people whom you normally wouldn't really notice or talk to, like if you take public transportation, whatever it is, because it really, I don't know how to describe this other than there is a certain magic in the human connection that we always underestimate. We always overestimate the importance of romantic love, family love, and then we kind of like don't pay attention to all the other kinds of love that flows back and forth.
Yeah, this is very interesting because when you say it, it makes me think about how like we chase this happiness through having a relationship, right? Having this perfect relationship, and that will be happily ever after, as the fairy tale goes, right?
Yeah.
But happily ever after, this happiness can come from can come from all the small things as well, the daily things, and you don't have to pursue this giant dream of the perfect relationship. Right?
Yeah.
All your other relationships with humans around you is also part of the happily ever after.
It's quite magical. Like, I really believe in a human connection. Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, so we're going to continue on reading comments. Myrna.
Accept each other's individuality. Do not expect too much from people. Learn to be flexible and adaptable. Just do what you can. Yeah, just do what you can is a wonderful thing because
you can't
all
do
we
beyond
can
that.
do, is what we can, and we try our best.
Yes.
And I love that statement now. Like, just try your best, and that's it.
Yeah. Peter, he says, thanks for giving more patience with others. You give yourself more patience with others, Peter. Mingjo watching from Japan. Hi, Ginger Smith. Kayan, who says, yes, I try to communicate with him. However, he thinks that he's right. Forever, I'm wrong. And he always compares me with other girls. He mentioned, as a couple, we don't need to have a communication. And communication is my problem, not his problem. So, yup. You have to ask yourself why you're still in a relationship. If you don't feel valued in the relationship, then I think you only have two choices, right? Either you accept him for who he is and choose to be happy in the relationship, or you choose to not be in the relationship. Either way, don't feel like you're a victim, because you're definitely not. Take your power back. I'm not saying you should break up with him. I'm saying that you need to examine what you want and know what is healthy or not healthy for you, and make your decisions accordingly. You can't choose to be in a relationship and then feel like the person doesn't appreciate you, because it's your choice to be in it too.
All these choices we make are based on this scale. Like those kind of weighing scales, right? One goes up and one goes down, right? And we normally make our decisions in the direction of what we feel is worth to us, right? So if we say, I see this T-shirt that's probably worth in my mind $50, right? And this T-shirt is $20. Then obviously you make the decision to buy it, right?
As in, like what?
Like in your favor, right? So when things are weighing towards the direction of you choosing something, right? Then you go in that direction. Now, sometimes we feel that a lot of things are unfair in a relationship.
Oh, so like the t-shirt is actually $20, but you have to pay $50 for it.
No, the t-shirt is $50, but you have to pay $20 for it.
That's good, right? It's a bargain.
Yeah, exactly. Then you go and buy the shirt, right?
Yeah, but if it's the other way around,
then you don't buy it, right?
Yeah.
So we know all these internal calculations we
Right.
make in our head.
Right.
And sometimes we say, you know what, this is really unfair. My
Yeah.
relationship is really unfair. Now the
Yeah.
question, then you think that the scale is in the
Yeah.
other direction. You're saying
Yeah.
that, you know, this person always says I'm not right, blah, 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 and I am just this person.
so it's as
thinking.
if the t-shirt is $20, but you have to pay $50 for it, and you feel like it's very unfair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then you just don't buy it, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, why do we stay
Why do you
in
still
this-
buy it?
Yeah. Is that sometimes we don't identify the things on the scale.
Yeah,
We
that's true.
think that it's just these few things.
It's
that we
more
put-
than the t-shirt that you're buying.
Yeah, we need to
because-
identify deeper all the things that we put into this relationship in terms of the value of it. Sometimes it is our fear, sometimes it is our, you know, subconscious
Yeah.
desires.
Or maybe we just want to be in a relationship and
Yeah.
we fear not having a relationship. It's like a t-shirt's value, right? If you think this t-shirt is only worth $20, but you find yourself paying $50 for it, and you end up feeling it's very unfair, then you could ask yourself, why did you even buy it, right? Why did you still buy
okay,
it?
so for example,
So-
if let's say I bought a $50 t-shirt, a t-shirt that I thought would be worth $20 for $50, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I happen to have a giant hole in my t-shirt that I'm currently wearing, right?
Yeah.
I go to the store and he says it's $50, right? Then I'm like, you know what? This is so unfair, but I'm gonna pay it anyway
Because you need to change your
because I
t-shirt
need to
right
change my
now.
t-shirt. Why do I need to change my t-shirt? Because I'm embarrassed to have this giant hole in my
So
t-shirt.
the value is not just the quality and the make of the t-shirt. It's also like, okay, the value to me is that I now get to take off my torn t-shirt and put a
Yeah,
new t-shirt
I
on.
saves me from
It's like, you
embarrassment
know how, like,
and all these other things.
concerts, right? You pay more for stuff, right? Because you just need to use the toilet or you need to get tissue paper
Exactly.
or food.
So there are all these other factors that sometimes we don't pay attention to.
Yes.
Right? And it's saving me from embarrassment. The extra
Yeah.
$30 is actually meant to save me embarrassment.
So
but
that's still value.
yeah, but now we're looking at just the price of the t-shirt and we don't
And we start to feel like we're being taken advantage of.
yeah, we don't have the vision to see wider of why we are doing this, right?
Yes. That's
So
a great example.
this is a very important thing to look at when we are sort of weighing whether we want to be with a person or not, right? So it's not so simple. It requires a lot of insight into who we are, our
Yeah.
fears and our hopes and our desires and our attachments.
Yeah. Not
And-
easy.
yeah, but
but
it is
doable.
worth it as well. It brings
Yeah.
us more joy in the direction that we want to have joy.
I mean, this is the process of self-discovery. I mean, like, we're adults, but how many of us can say, like, oh, we understand ourselves really well? I mean, until today, I'm still discovering things about myself that I never thought I knew about myself, like a year ago. So it's very interesting, you know?
And we change all the time. So our hopes and dreams and fears change as well.
Wani here says, my friend tries to communicate his standards with a partner, but the partner still does not respond and do the things that she always
Wants him
to do. That means does not do the things she wants him to do. She feels frustrated. Why? She's always the one who has to keep reminding him to do it. It's very simple. It's because he doesn't feel motivated to do it. Because what you want him to do can be very different from what he wants to do. Now, your friend, most people usually get upset when their partner doesn't do the thing they want them to do. Even I've told you 100 times, you're still not doing it. And the reason we get upset, if we're very honest with ourselves, is because we feel like our partner doesn't care enough about us to do something that is important to us.
See how this story
Yes.
is being formed. We
Yes.
make very quick decisions
Yes.
about the story
Yes.
based upon how our standards are,
Yes.
right? And where's the curiosity here? Where is the the sort of genuine want to understand, right?
Yeah.
Because we so quickly get frustrated and put people in boxes and say, oh, because of this. And when we explore, more often than not, we find that the reasons are different from what we have in our head.
One of the important things to understand in chapter 2 of my book, In Fulfillment in Love and Relationships, and I find really helpful, just a simple understanding is, even if what is important to you, like, can you see this? I know you can't really read it, but I'm just going to show you the quote anyway. Even if what is important to you isn't important to your partner, it does not mean that you are unimportant. And I was just having a conversation the other day with someone, and she's like, my husband doesn't do this, and can you see? She's like, because husband is just there and they're interacting and I'm there as well. And after he left, she's like, can you see how he doesn't care? And for me, I'm like flabbergasted because I can clearly see he cares. That's why he came over and spoke with her. But from her perspective, he doesn't care because he's not doing what she wants him to do according to her standards. And I had to point it out. And I said, do you realize that you measure everything he does against what you yourself would or wouldn't do? So the problem is that she feels like he doesn't care. And this is the main problem when our partner doesn't do what we tell them to do.
Yeah.
We feel like they don't care. And you need to ask yourself, is that the truth? Is it the truth that they don't care? Or are they just not doing things in the way that you want them to? It's two very
Sometimes
separate
our
things.
emotions can really lead us down the path of, they don't care,
Yeah.
But it's worth really thinking critically about this.
Yes.
There's this question.
Which actually is linked, like Audrey's question.
Audrey's question here is, how should a wife feel when the husband lets her walk alone to a car on the street after a gathering?
Okay, this is interesting. I'll answer it based on how I would feel. Now, I personally would much prefer any boyfriends I had in the past and Yuri to walk me to the car, especially at night and when it's perceived to be dangerous. Why? Because number one, it may be dangerous, so safety in numbers. And two, I feel like it's something I like. I prefer. So I would convey this to him, right? And I would say, I would like you to walk me to my car. Now, what's actually really hard is that if he says, I would prefer not to, right? So in these kind of instances, what I would do is I would feel a little bit uncomfortable with that and maybe even upset. And I would need to take some time to go over why I feel upset. And what my objective is, I don't want to be upset. And so I will rationalize and reason out strategies and steps as to how I can let this emotion go. And then it goes back to curiosity and understanding. I'm very curious. I will ask myself, does Yuri love me? And if the answer is yes, I believe he loves me. And the second question I ask myself, well, then why wouldn't he want to walk me to my car at night? Because if he loves me, he would want to do that, right? That is our first instinct. If you love me, you would do it. And so if you don't do it, it must mean you do not love me or don't care. And now I have to go back to the first question. Hang on. I thought I just said I believe he loves me. Do I really believe he loves me? Yes, I believe he loves me. So then my curiosity goes further. I'm like, okay, so he loves me, but he doesn't want to walk me to the car. I got to figure out why. I need to be curious enough to examine this. Now, if I'm upset, right, and I'm just upset, I wouldn't be curious, right? I wouldn't care to examine this.
You'll just either get into this huge fight,
Yes.
right, where this person might start doing it because they're afraid that you'll be upset,
Yes.
rather than for the reason that you think it should be done, right? And this is very interesting because any guy I know who would say to a girl like, no, I'd rather not, right?
All the guys would say that.
No, any guy who would say that, I would be extremely curious to know the reason.
Yes.
Maybe, their leg super hurts. Maybe they're scared of like
Dark. Maybe they're afraid of the dark.
Yeah, when they're walking back alone after sending the girl to the car, maybe they're super afraid of the dark.
Maybe when they were young, they were walking with their parent and the parent got mugged and they watched it happen. Like, you don't know. You don't know why somebody doesn't want to do something.
Yeah.
And it's worth examining instead of being upset.
Yeah, and that's, that is a favor to both of you, really.
Yes.
And when you can do that, when you can approach these things with curiosity, right? Why people are the way they are.
Yes.
Then you get to understand and love them so much better, truly.
You will have empathy for them instead of judgment.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling, my partner doesn't do that now, you will have empathy like, oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the dark, or they were traumatized, or maybe they're just lazy.
Yeah, sometimes we will have judgments on these people and we will say that this person doesn't know how to take care of other people, or this person doesn't know how to be happy, or he must be a very frustrated person, or blah, blah, blah. But maybe they just have very particular reasons, and we would love to know. I would love to know, right? Why this happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the key always goes back to yourself. Like you have to understand yourself well enough to know why you want it, and also to be able to have the skills to be curious and communicate that curiosity, and also have the skills to not take it personally when they're trying to figure out the answer. Maybe they don't even know, and and you have to have the skills and practice the ability to not automatically think that it's because they don't love or care about you. Right? Because sometimes it's nothing to do with you. It's dumb. Like they're a human being, Everyone is allowed to have like their preferences too. Like it's not just you have preferences, they also have preferences. And just because they're a guy or they're a girl, they're supposed to do certain things, doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah. And sometimes people's preferences just lead them to be unreasonably frustrated.
Yeah.
And that's just the way they are, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Sometimes we are unreasonable.
Yeah, and to understand that in people is to be able to love people, really.
Yeah.
Right? To say that, you know what, you are like me, I'm like you in our own different ways,
Yeah.
in our imperfections, and we would love to be loved despite our flaws, right?
Yeah.
So we bring that kind of love and understanding to our partner as well,
Yeah.
in spite of how they might seem unreasonable to us.
Yes. It depends again on whether you want to be with the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Zara here says the t-shirt example was so great. It made a lot of sense to me. Awesome.
I'm a huge t-shirt fan, obviously.
Love from
you know,
Morocco. He's usually has two colors, black and white.
Yeah.
it's like his uniform.
Saves me the trouble of
Yes.
choosing.
I like this
I mean,
uniform.
even with black and white, I still have to choose.
You still have to think, right? Should I wear
it's
white?
like,
Should I wear
is
black?
it a white kind of day or is it a black kind of day? You know?
Oh, hello Joshua Wong. 恭喜
yes.
恭喜. I haven't seen you this Chinese New Year. It's crazy, man.
Joshua. Let's see, more comments.
Yeah. Yes, Vanessa. That's great. Althea, how do you deal with someone who constantly holds you accountable by their standards? Communicate. I think sometimes people don't even realize that they're holding you accountable for their standards. They're just trying to convey to you what they want. And I think that if they get upset at you for not adhering to the standards, I think then you can sit down and again practice curiosity as to why it matters so much to them.
Yeah, and sometimes, if you feel like their standards are just not your kind of standards, it's fine as well.
Yeah.
That if they think that you are a person of lower standard than them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, what does it mean to us,
Yeah.
right? Is it pride? Is it fear? Is it, what does it mean
Yeah.
when they hold us to a standard and we feel like we cannot
Yeah.
reach that standard?
Mirna here asks, how do you deal with a person who always blame their partner for their misconducts and infidelities? I think if your partner blame you all the time, you gotta ask yourself, what do you value in that relationship that you want to be with the person? And if you can find a strong enough answer, then the way to be happy in that relationship is to accept them for who they are. If they want to blame, let them blame, Like if you love them so much and you want to be there and you want that relationship so badly, then the only way for you to be happy is to accept that they are like that. Right? That their mindset is like that. However, if you feel like, okay, this is not a relationship that is healthy for me, even though I do have love for you, but I can acknowledge that this is not healthy and I have a lot of value and respect for myself, then maybe we're better off as friends. You have to make the decision, and at every point, I always believe that our happiness is within our power and it's our responsibility. So people can cause us to, feel like all sorts of emotions. They can cause difficult situations. However, at the end of the day, whether we choose to take the emotion, wrap it up in a big bowl and carry it with us everywhere we go, or we choose to let it go, fly away, it's really up to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, does that make sense? I don't know what I said. I was like, halfway through, I'm like...
Maybe often, this letting go thing is very important because oftentimes, whether it's standards or whether it's all these emotions that we carry around for other people, right, is we think a lot. Right, we think a lot about the kind of person that we are, and we define ourselves by it.
Yes.
And sometimes it feels a bit scary to let go of who we think we are, and to just be who we really are. And two things. One is, it is scary for sure, because sometimes then you feel like you just adrift, and who am I? What's my value in life? Right?
Without this person.
Without this person, without this stance, or without these thoughts, right?
Yeah. Like without my standards, who am I?
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's also freeing. When you can really embrace it, it is very freeing to just be what you feel right when you feel it's right. And there is a lot of fear in society. I can understand as well, like why men don't wear skirts walking out, or why, all these things, right? What does it really truly mean, right? And it's our fear of the unknown, the fear of not fitting in, right? That we hold ourselves to,
Yeah.
right?
I have this very interesting question. Audrey here asks, if true love exists, doesn't that mean the man should protect his woman first rather than think of his own safety and anxiety? If true love exists, wouldn't the woman want the man to also be safe, right? So this question can go round and round. So there's no I think we watch too many Disney movies where the Prince Charming is supposed to, at his own risk, protect you. Right now, I want to ask you a question. Why is your life more valuable just because you're a woman? Even like parent and child. It's not that parents should sacrifice their life for the children. It's just that parents, the kind of makeup that parents have towards their kid is that it's instinct that they will do it. And so we look at that and we say like, oh my God, that's love, and if you love me, you'll do exactly that. But it doesn't make sense, right? Because every single life, like even your child's life, is no more important than yours, even though you may feel that way. And in reality, just because the person says they love you, it doesn't mean that they should sacrifice themselves for you. Just like if you are a good, this whole idea of like a good wife, a good husband, a good daughter-in-law, a good, good whatever,
Requires sacrifice.
yeah.
No. It's only true love when there is this massive sacrifice,
Yeah.
right? And I think that is very Disney-esque.
Yeah.
But one of the best lessons you can learn from Disney movies
Yes.
is
That
to let it go.
Let it go. No, I think if you honestly want your man to be this way, you're going to be very miserable because he's a human being and he's not going to be able to give you this because he has his own personality, he has his own character, he has his own beliefs, he has his own ideas, he also has his own insecurities, he has his own incapabilities, he's human.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you want a man to be like this, he also wants for you to be a certain way,
Yeah.
right? To be the other way, or whatever
Yeah.
is the movie way, or what.
And it just
whatever,
never
right?
ends, right?
Yeah, and it never ends. You never have these pieces of the puzzle fit perfectly together because nothing in life is perfect.
It can, in a certain level, when there's acceptance. So it's like, I accept you for who you are, and I'm not trying to change you. But we're just gonna live our lives together, working through problems, doing our best, and being grateful for every moment that we have alive. I think that approach to any kind of relationship or partnership is the best.
Yeah.
Because you can't lose. You can't
Yeah.
lose from being grateful.
Yeah.
you know?
The way to have a perfect relationship is to understand that it's imperfect. That you are imperfect and your partner is imperfect.
Jeannie, here's a great question.
How to unlearn the standards that we have in mind. I love this word unlearn.
Yes.
Because, we have all our lives, as children and as teenagers and adults, we learn a lot of lessons. And sometimes it's not lessons you see in a book or in a film. You just pick it up and you see stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
It's conditioning.
yeah, it's conditioning.
Yeah.
And mindfulness is the ability to look at ourselves and see our thoughts and feelings and all the mechanisms that happen that creates our emotions, right?
Yes.
And when we see that the standards causes unhappiness, it's very, we are creatures of very simple things. If something causes us pain, we sort of run away from it. If the kettle's really hot, we don't leave our hand on it, right? So if we can truly see clearly that a thought or a standard is causing us unhappiness and truly see it.
And not just think in concept.
Yeah, not just the concept, truly see understand ourselves, right? We will naturally unlearn it. Sometimes the habits happen, just because you do it daily.
Yes.
But when you see it, you cannot unsee it as well.
I'm going to give you an example, okay?
Yeah.
So, And this example, you bear with me, there's a point to it, right? Okay, so what Yuri was saying earlier about the key to unlearning the standards you have in mind the key is to identify which standards and why these standards don't serve you, okay? Now, and automatically you will drop the standard, okay? It's like, I have like a major breakout on my face right now. I don't know if you can see. And it's because I ate a ton of chili over Chinese New Year. Now, I love, love, love eating spicy food. And I usually don't eat too much spice because I know I'll break out, right?
She has a sensitivity
I have a
towards
very
chili.
sensitivity.
Yeah.
I have a huge sensitivity towards chili. However, I love chili so much, right? Like I love spicy food so much, so much, so much. And I can't help myself a lot of the times, so I still eat it. But in moderation, it's fine. But over Chinese New Year, I took like this much like chili, and it was like poof, I'm breaking out. Now, because I can see that my body is reacting to it, and I can see that my body has an aversion to chili. Now, what happens is that now I'm beginning to see chili as undesirable. You hear that? I love spicy food and I love chili, but because now it has caused a very undesirable effects on me, it's not just vanity. It's also I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm abusing my body. I mean, this is a sign that my body is saying, stop abusing me, right? And I value my body and I value the fact that it's like, this is my home, right? And so I'm thinking, Xandria, do I really want to like push my body to the brink of like, like breaking out? Like, it's not healthy. And so now my brain has somehow convinced me that I don't like chili so much anymore. Like when I look at it, I used to say, oh my God, I want it. Now I look at it and say, I don't actually want it. I don't actually like it. And this is the amazing thing with our mind. The moment you find that something doesn't serve you and you can identify why you don't want it and why it's undesirable, your brain will automatically change to adopt a different kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere once, which I really love, this phrase about how when your mind is clear,
Yeah.
you will see the beautiful as beautiful. But when your mind is clouded, we tend to see the ugly as beautiful and the beautiful as ugly.
Yeah.
And what does it mean, right? I was thinking I was trying to contemplate what this means. Is sometimes, maybe we love drinking a lot and getting drunk, for example, right? Oh, we love it. I look forward to it at the end of every week.
It's like my chili.
And that, to me at least, is not a very desirable or very beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Right? But when we are not clear, and we are just in the world of senses and desire and pleasure, right?
Emotion,
Yeah.
desire.
And sometimes we eat until we feel like we want to throw up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is that a nice, beautiful thing?
Yeah.
I don't feel like it is. That sensation of being too full that you want, that nausea, doesn't feel like something I want. But in the realm of when we are not clear, we think that the ugly things are beautiful.
That we think that we
sometimes.
want it.
Yeah.
Like going out and drinking till you puke. Of course, you don't like the feeling of puking, but yet you enjoy the sensation of what the drinking gives you, that you can think that is desirable. Sometimes we can't identify what is undesirable. And the same thing with standards. Sometimes we cannot identify that this standard is not serving me.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
why we cannot change it.
That's why we need to be very mindful of how we feel, what the results of things are, and whether or not they cause us suffering.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you should answer this question from Audrey.
Audrey asked me, Yuri, will you let Xandria walk alone to a car while you go to the other direction to yours during midnight? I want to listen to gentlemen's common usual reaction. Now, this is a very interesting question because, I would do it, but not because I feel like this is the standard that all gentlemen need to be, right? And like we were talking about the reasons why someone would do it and the reasons why someone would not do it. And when we are curious, we understand life better, not whether someone adheres to the standards of a gentleman or not, right? I would prefer to do it because I think it's safer, right? And if I did not do it, I must have my reasons because
And
I'm a human being.
what's funny is that after he walks me to my car, he's gonna walk to his car alone. That's equally dangerous. So why am I not concerned? I mean, I'm also concerned, like for me, why between the two of us, why is it that he must walk me to my car? Because then he has to walk to his car alone, and isn't that dangerous too?
Yeah, and the question I would ask also is like, why would not a girl walk a guy to the car?
Why not?
I mean, obviously, I understand that the world generally is more dangerous for women.
Because of our size, physical strength.
And that makes sense to me, right?
Yeah.
But people who don't do it, we must understand why they don't do it. Is it because their leg hurts? Or because, there's a reason why people do things. People don't just randomly not want to do things or want to do things. There are things that drive us.
You know what's funny is that I've walked to my car in the dark alone before, many times in fact, at midnight, right? And Yuri wasn't there, and I can do it by myself.
And when I wasn't there, was she upset that I wasn't there to walk her to a car?
Exactly. And so it's like, why is it that when you're alone, you're perfectly capable to do certain things, and then when the guy is with you, you sort of feel like, hey, suddenly you become incapable. It's not about so much just that. And if you really want a guy to walk you to your car, you can just ask. I think that a lot of the times we want to feel like the person should offer. It's like, hey, I'm not going to talk if you're not going to start. I'm waiting for you to start. Or I'm not going to ask for that. I think you should be a gentleman to open the door for me because I'm not going to ask you for it.
Yeah.
However, if you want a guy to open the door for you, just say, oh, you know what? Can you open the door for me? It just makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
And if you want a guy to walk you to your car, you can just say, I know that this is not the norm, what you would usually do, but could you please walk me to my car? It will make me feel so much safer and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You can just say it.
And
right?
I got to say this, that the more shoulds that you have in life,
Yeah.
the more unhappy you are going to be with life. So you think a guy should do this.
Yeah.
A guy should be like that. A gentleman should behave in this manner.
Yes.
And so that means I should not have to say this.
I'm not saying that you cannot have preferences, Audrey.
Yes.
I feel like you should read my book because in chapter 2 onwards, I talk a lot about relationships and how we can actually communicate our preferences to our partner and what we want to feel good, to feel safe, to feel loved, and how do we have a conversation with our partner about it without us feeling upset. And I think it's really important because why do you want to be in a relationship when all you feel is upset all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When what you're giving your partner isn't what they want. And if your partner just says, hey,
This is not a
I really appreciate it that you're trying to do this for me, but I would prefer this.
Yeah.
And they're not frustrated or anything. Like, you are kind of like best friends, right?
Yeah.
And if your best friend say, hey, you know what, I prefer this, then you just let's go do this, right?
Yeah. It's like, oh my god, birthday present's supposed to be a surprise. But if you want the person to read your mind and get the right present all the time, and you still want it to be a surprise and then get upset when it's the wrong present, I think you can just save yourself a lot of trouble. This is what I tell myself anyway. And just tell the person what you want, and you end up, you don't need it to be a surprise for you to feel delighted too. You know what I mean? Like, we have a lot of rules and regulations that actually, like standards, we have a lot of standards that sabotage us and make us miserable.
Of course, I can see it in myself as well. Sometimes we're conditioned to like, oh, if this person just figured out this thing about me and magically did this for me, it would be so nice.
It would make me feel so special.
Yeah, but honestly, this is also a recipe. I realize that it's also a recipe for great dissatisfaction, right?
And the other thing that we have to acknowledge is that the person is doing other things.
Yeah.
That are special for you.
Yeah.
But because you're so adamant on seeing it from your own standards, you don't even recognize.
Yeah, we don't even realize this wonderful thing sometimes people do for us.
Yeah.
And sometimes in those kind of stories where like oh, the person is dead and gone already, and then somebody tells you, and then you discover this special thing that this person does for you, and then you feel like, oh my god, they love me so much, and then the music comes up and everything, right?
Yeah.
But we don't want a situation like that.
Yeah.
We want to enjoy the person and value them in the present moment.
Yeah. We're going to read the last question.
Yep.
Jian Hao, or Ho, he asks, what if an individual has an ego and one face, like in...
There's a Chinese term, want to have pride.
That causes them not to speak out, not to voice out, but the individual internally expects something.
We were just talking about this.
I think that if it bothers you, If it doesn't bother you, then let people be however they want to be. But I think if it bothers you, then you can have a conversation with them and try to ask them what is it that they prefer and any preferences they would like to share.
You'd be surprised. Like being with Xandria, and Xandria is sort of like this more outspoken, I would say, courageous person, right?
Yeah.
Who would sort of like ask and
Yeah.
and bring up things that people might feel a little bit, especially in the Asian culture, right?
Yes.
Might feel a little bit
Like, why are you asking?
like a little bit uncomfortable talking
Yeah.
about this, and there might be initial discomfort, but honestly, when it happens, what I love is the result of it being brought up or asked.
Yeah, a lot of things were kind of like, hey, it's not normal to talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Then I'm like, why is it not normal?
We don't
to
talk about these kind of things. Sometimes
It's
people
like
say that.
sex or like preferences
Yeah.
or like even attraction, or everything, you know.
And the result of this being brought up is I have personally felt it like within my family, our
Yes,
family,
yes.
that we are so much more open to each other and able to recognize that we are all people humans
Human
who
beings.
feel things and think things, and it's not, we are not just this puppets or these characters that we are playing. We are just people.
How do you react when someone says you're pushy for sharing your feelings and standards? I think that whatever people feel, we have to learn not to take it personally. If that's how they feel, that's how they feel, and we have to ask ourselves: wait, am I okay? The only reason we're pushy, we have to ask ourselves: am I being pushy? And you can answer it yourself, because if you feel upset when the person doesn't agree with your standard, when you're sharing your standard, sometimes you share your thought and the person don't agree and you feel upset, then maybe you want to push that belief onto the person, right? And you have to examine that yourself, and if you're not, and you know that you're not feeling upset, and you know that you really can accept that they don't agree, then for you it's okay that they feel what they feel. Just accept that too.
Yeah, and like the genuine curiosity thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if let's say someone says, "Hey, you're very pushy," and it's like,
Oh.
how like,
Please let me
what
know.
does it mean? Like
Yeah.
like when you say I'm pushy, tell me how it's like.
Tell me how it makes you feel,
Yeah.
and how can I use certain different words, maybe, to convey certain things, so that I don't come across as pushy, because it's not my intention.
And it's, people will be surprised if you approach the conversation like that.
Yeah.
You're gonna be very pushy, and I said, I'd like to know how that makes you feel.
I would like to know how it makes you feel.
Yeah, and what do I do that makes you feel that way?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if I could change something, what would it be?
Yeah, I would like to try.
Yeah, imagine how the other person would feel.
They'll be like, whoa.
Yeah, right? And
Yeah.
where the direction of that this dynamic will
And
go.
you will be so much happier, seriously. Okay, Audrey, I think that you have to read my book first. I'm not saying it because it's my book. I'm saying it because I believe all these 5 chapters in this book can help you make a decision and answer your question. This is a question only you can answer, but I would really suggest you read this book first to have an understanding of what you want, what you don't want, what preferences are, what conditionings are, what expectations are, what love is. Everything is in here. And once you've read it, let me know, and then we can continue this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. It's been more than an hour. Oh my God.
Wow.
Back with a bang.
I thought we were going
He's got a headache.
Yeah, because you know what? I feel so much better now.
Oh, see, after talking to you guys,
Thank you, guys.
headache went away.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all your great comments and
Yeah.
being so engaged throughout.
Yeah. We really value all your thoughts and your comments and
Yes.
just being here with us.
2020 is going to be freaking amazing, and we will be here. We will try definitely to make it a regular thing every Wednesday and Thursday. The only times we won't be able to come on live as regularly scheduled is when something else comes up, But other than that, we will be here, and you will be here along with us, and we can grow together.
Yeah.
2020.
Thank you so much.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Arigato.
Have a fantastic, what day? Thursday.
Thursday.
And be happy always.
Bye.
Bye.